I think One Nation's been the only consistent political party for the last 20 years.
They're not talking about you. All right, well, let me tell you, One Nation is talking about you.
It's like the media's run away from One Nation. They're too scared to ask us any questions, mainly because we're straight talkers and we've got the answers.
This is like a call to arms. You guys need to start making the real decisions and who you're going to vote for.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the ExCandidates. My name is Stephen Tripp, and as always, I'm joined by Adam Zahra. How are you going tonight, Adam?
I'm all right, Stephen. How are you going?
I'm pretty good, and we're going down to Victoria again to speak to another candidate, but this time in the lower house. We've got Ben Mihail. How are you tonight, Ben?
Good, thanks, lads. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Good on you.
You're going to be contesting Bendigo East, is that right?
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Ben Mihail. I'm going to be the state candidate for Bendigo East with the One Nation, obviously. I contested the federal election for the seat of Bendigo, winning 5.5% of the primary vote, which was best out of all the smaller parties, which was fantastic. And my history is predominantly in emergency services, where I spent 11 years as a 000 police dispatcher.
Wow. Okay. And are you still doing that now?
No, I haven't been working there since, just over a year, but I was officially let go on March 1st this year.
Should we guess the circumstances why?
I would usually say 3 guesses, but I think we can get it in one. It was due to the jab mandates.
Yeah, okay. Is that a big motivation for you, why you stepped up to run as a candidate in the first place, or was it other issues that you really wanted?
Yeah, I think it was more around the political integrity and transparency that we're not seeing here in Victoria. So I actually contacted One Nation in June last year wanting to run for them because I felt that I had the skill set that was required to make a positive change. And obviously I saw the writing on the wall when certain industries started getting mandated, and I thought, well, it's not too long until the essential workers get mandated as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, wow. So 000 dispatcher, and so you would be a person that you would behind the phone. If you rang 000, you would go through to you.
Yeah, correct. So the process is that you call 000, you'll get Telstra, someone from Telstra that say police, fire, ambulance, and where. And then they put you through. If it's in Victoria, it'll go through to what's called the Emergency Services Telecommunications Authority, or ESTA for short. And that comes through to our call takers. So we do all police, fire, ambulance, and SES call taking and dispatch services for all of Victoria. So I did all of regional Victoria when I was working there, and I did police and SES.
Okay.
So with the election coming up, what are some of the issues that you're focusing on with your electorate?
Yeah, it's going to be the critical services, because what we've seen in Victoria in general, which is echoed across Bendigo East as well, is things like the emergency services, the healthcare, the political integrity. Education's a big one. The indoctrination of our kids is something that I just can't abide by anymore, having 2 boys at 13 and 14 years old. And obviously up until last year, I was the school council president.
So what are some of the things that are happening in the schools?
Yeah, well, in the schools, I actually just recorded my latest video today on the education sector, so that'll be going up next week, which will be good. Essentially, we've got bureaucrats that seem to have found their qualifications in the Weet-Bix box that are bringing us woke programs such as Respectful Relationships, which is a very slightly watered-down version of the Safe School programs, which essentially teaches that if your child wishes to change their gender, then the school can counsel them through that process without the consent or even knowledge of the parents due to the mature minors' loopholes.
Now, just quickly with that, so that was passed in Parliament, wasn't it? Because that's not actually all around Australia. That's only in Victoria that
yeah. So with the mature minors, what that means is that if a child's attained the age of 12, it means that if the school or a school psychologist or someone that they deem qualified says that the student is capable of making their own decisions outside of the parents, then they're more than welcome to do that. Yet they can't go out and get a tattoo or go out drinking at that age, and probably for good reason.
They can't even give them the school can't even administer a Panadol.
No, definitely not.
But they can
yeah, that's right. But we can give them, life-changing and detrimental surgery that's irreversible, and that's no problem apparently.
Well, a simple thing as a female taking a testosterone tablet, and then going on to a course of obviously testosterone tablets. Right?
That's right.
It's just not a matter of after 6 months of taking it that everything goes back to normal. It actually reduces the size of the uterus. It actually damages the body to a point where they'd be very lucky if they could have a child as a female.
That's exactly it, and that's what we're looking at. We're doing this to our kids, apparently, and apparently it's all good. But having said that, when you have socialist policies, I mean, socialism might look like a marginally attractive prospect if you're looking through a dirty mirror, through a dusty window at 500 metres with no glasses on. But once you run out of other people's money, it kind of loses its lustre, I think.
Have you spoken to any of the other parents, or through your campaigning, have you spoken to other people? Like, what's the feeling on the ground? Are people outraged? I assume that some are. Is there any support?
Well, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know about it.
Okay.
And that's the problem. Through the federal campaign, I've spoken to a lot of teachers and now former teachers, and a lot of parents called me up asking about it and asking what my stance was. So I'd always go out and have a chat to them and find out what their concerns were. And obviously, they were quite warmed when I told them that I was firmly against such things, and I was going to be fervently fighting against it should I get to Parliament.
It really shocks me with this whole respectful relationships and gender fluidity and all this ideology going through the schools, because and it's funny that parents don't know about it. Every time, even when I've gone and spoken to people, and sometimes when I've said speeches or I've presented whatever I've presented for certain things, people look at it like, "What are you talking about? They actually would turn around and go, "You're an idiot. What conspiracy is this?" And
that's right.
And I knew about the Victorian legislation. I know it's legislated, because that means that it's actually against the law for a parent to try to talk their child out of going through transgender.
Correct.
Or transing. So it's so against the natural flow of things for me and my beliefs that it's so hard to get the terminology even right. And they get confused on it themselves with him, her, she, it, what, or whatever. So,
it's gender dysphoria, and I think that's the correct nomenclature for it, gender dysphoria these days. And look, if you want to be called a he, she, whatever, that's really up to you. But don't expect me to buy into your fantasies.
That's right. And we've had reports of furries as well. Is that all part of it as well? Have you got them down there?
Not too sure on what that one is, to be honest. You might have to explain that one.
So if a child identifies as an animal.
Oh, yeah. So I did see the one, was it a horse or a duck or something like that?
Yeah, so, I mean...
Well, we're laughing, but it's actually
it's terrible. Like, we shouldn't laugh about it. You're right. Sorry, Stephen.
No, I was
just going to say that's fine. I'm happy to identify as the Premier of Victoria, and I'll put a stop to this right now.
I know, and that's my argument to everything now. Like they talk about. I'm not going to go away from you, but we're talking about the cost of living prices, and we were promised a $270 discount on our electricity bills, and then what happens is we copped an 18% increase. And,
that's right.
In the speech that I recently, I said, well. Did the increase identify as a discount? Because that's the only thing you could actually, that's the only argument you've got now. Yeah.
Well, clearly the government's getting a discount.
Well, they're getting something. But sorry, mate. Back to your school. Back to the schools and this respectful relationship.
Yeah. Well, with that, when it first came in, the school that I was school council vice president at the time. And we were one of the trial schools on it. And I'll say, look, the school I was the school council president, vice president of was a fantastic school, don't get me wrong. But the first time anyone heard about it was when it was in the newsletter. Like I didn't hear about it in a school council meeting or anything like that. It was just in the newsletter, and I had a lot of angry parents messaging me, calling me, asking me what's up. And I said, I've got no idea. And, you can imagine my shock and horror when I kind of read through what was actually being taught.
This is how they try and sneak it in.
That's exactly it. Socialism by stealth.
Yeah. So with Bendigo East, you're going up against Jacinta Allen, is that right? She's the deputy premier.
Correct.
So can you give us a bit of a story? Like she's only been deputy premier for a short time, because the other
that's correct. So she's had the seat for many years, I think since over 20 years. So she, it's considered to be a safe Labor seat, which is why we don't see any money come to Bendigo East, because it's just classic pork barrelling. Why would you put money here when you know you're going to win the seat? And why would Liberals put any money here when they know they're not going to win the seat? So, the only way to see money come to our district is to either flip the seat or turn it marginal. So she's the deputy premier, which kind of broke Labor's own policies, because they've now got a premier and a deputy premier that are from the socialist left faction of their own party, which is against their own policy, which means that, reading between the lines, it's quite a possibility that she's the heir apparent to the premiership.
And what happened to the previous deputy premier?
Resigning, deserting the ship, I believe.
So, we're hearing that a lot of the members of the Andrews government have resigned recently. What's the story behind that? How come? How many years has Labor been in government down in Victoria?
Yeah, they've had I think the last two terms at this stage, and Daniel Andrews.
Time really for people.
Well, it is. It's 8 years, and Daniel Andrews was the health minister back in 2008 when he's actually was the health minister when the Public Health and Wellbeing Act was brought into Parliament. But look, it depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go with why they're all leaving now. Obviously, I think the most popular opinion is that it's because if they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar and they're still in Parliament, then they lose their government pension. And if they're out of Parliament, then, okay, they get wrapped over the knuckles and whatever else, but they get to keep their government pension.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty crazy.
Because there is a lot of not conspiracy. There's a lot of talk, about like misgoings on with the Dan Andrews government down in. Yeah,
well, obviously they've been caught with multiple corruption scandals and the like, and obviously the IBAC the IBAC down here that's got no teeth to it whatsoever. Just simply says this is what we found. Daniel Andrews even came out and said, "Yep, okay, yes, we did rot the taxpayers, all this money, and you know what, we're not going to pay it back." And that's it. Apparently, that's the end of the story. So it's a case of and people still think that he's doing a great job, and I'm thinking, well, no, he's not doing a great job, because transparency for me is one of the cornerstones of any public official, because you've been voted to represent the people, and you're not representing the people. You're transparent with them.
What is it about this guy? Why is he so bulletproof, seemingly, or is it just a facade? Is it just media hype that he's untouchable?
I think it is more media hype, to be honest. We're going to find out in what's day the 30th. We're probably going to find out in about 4 weeks how bulletproof he really is.
Is it just that the Liberal Party is so disorientated and don't?
Yeah, well, I think it's the issue that we've got the same issue that we had in Queensland and Western Australia. There's just no opposition whatsoever to speak of. Which is how McGowan and Palaszczuk, were returned to power, so to speak. And I'm just hoping that we're going to see a repeat of the federal election, where people were that nicked off with Scott Morrison and his government that they didn't care who they replaced him with, just anyone. And hence we got Mr. 1/3 of the vote Albanese running the show. So, hopefully that could be a situation that we have here, where people are just that annoyed with Daniel Andrews that they're just going to vote him and all his ministers out, which would be a good thing. We had 750,000 people protesting last November when this pandemic legislation was going through. So I expect to see that reflected in the votes when they're counted at the end of next month.
Yeah, absolutely. And how have you got some volunteers and a decent volunteer base now? Have you been able to build upon your federal
slowly building. I'm really stoked to have Kylie as my campaign manager, because I didn't have a campaign manager at all last time. So it's nice to actually have someone telling me what to do, because I kind of winged my entire federal campaign, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just kind of wake up and thought, all right, what am I going to do today? All right, I'll just go record a video on this, and I think you actually, Adam, I think you actually shared one of my videos when I was talking about mandates during the federal election.
Probably did. I probably did. I watched I was trying to help and rally everybody who was going through the same thing like we were going through, and I still do it even today. If there's something that I can jump on, and especially if I know a little bit about it, I'll share it as well, because I'll get questioned about it too. So I try to just help everybody out. I'm Stephen as well. That's how Stephen and I actually kind of built up our friendship, was through Facebook and and sharing each other's stuff and just supporting each other. And that's what you guys got to do as well.
Well, it's called being a decent human being, for starters, and and that I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like even during the federal campaign, I actually, I got along quite well with several of my other candidates. We all understood that it was one seat that was up for grabs, and one of those people I'm actually going head to head with the Bendigo East, who I actually got along quite well with. So he ran as an independent. So I'm really looking forward to the next 4 weeks, and probably doing a video with him, a joint video with him.
Well, I think it's so important that, especially like freedom parties or the smaller parties, okay, that if you're, is that person also in a freedom party?
Yeah, he's. I'm happy to say James is a independent backed by Australia One.
All right, good. Okay, well, that's good, because what happens is people, every time I've ever talked, I speak to a lot of people as well, and especially through my day-to-day work, and I got an opportunity to get into people's homes and get in a comfortable environment with them. I'm there for a few hours, so you just start chatting, and people want to see that independent parties or the minor parties work together. So it's really important that I think it's actually very good that you show videos and photos of you and him, on pre-polls and campaigning and stuff together, because people want to see that if one of us parties get in, that we can work well with other parties, because you can't just stand there and be a brick wall. People really, well, especially up here in my electorate, people really understand that you have to work with people that you might not like, or you have to work with people or other parties that have different sides of policies that you might not agree with, but together you have to work together to get it done. So I think it's a good tactic to actually get on with your candidates.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And look, at the end of the day, if you're lucky enough to get elected, then the expectation is that you will work with members from other parties for the greater good of the people that you're there to represent.
Oh, it's not lucky enough. It's about how much hard work you put in, okay?
We'll run with that one.
Yeah, not luck. Although with you guys down there with your preference whisperer and all that kind of stuff, that makes it a bit...
Yeah, I've got a video coming out on that too.
Yeah, all right. No worries.
That's about 2 weeks away.
Oh, okay.
Can you give it a little bit now?
Well, with the way the preferencing works down here in Victoria, in the upper house, essentially you put a 1 above the line, and that is it. That's nothing else. So therefore, the party actually dictates where your preferences go. So we've got a gentleman by Glenn Drury down here, I should say, in Victoria, who's made a bit of an art form out of it, and he can make the numbers talk quite well. Hence why he's called the preference whisperer. And if you pay him a nominal fee, a consultation fee, he'll try and get the preferences to work in your favour. And once you get in, then you pay him quite a larger fee. So once you get in, but this is how we ended up with Fiona Patton, Rod Barton, and Andy Medic, three of the four crossbenchers that sold us out 30 pieces of silver.
Wow.
Yeah, they got in with what was it, only a few 100,000 votes or something?
Yeah, well, Rod Barton in particular from the Transport Matters Party, he got very few votes, but the preferences just kept adding votes to his tally, so it worked out quite well for him.
That's just wrong, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we have a resident statistician that we definitely talk to a lot, and he's a good bloke, and he was telling me today, just off the cuff, not 100% fact, but I can't remember the name of the candidate, but somebody got in off 44 votes or something
Yeah,
like that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It was they had such a little vote number. Like, it was literally not even in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And just because of the way the preferences worked, it just kept rolling on and rolling on and rolling on. They got in. I don't know who that candidate was because I can't remember. But I'm sure Sam will be on here just going, mate, it was this person. but we just had a bit of a chat. To me, it's crazy how each state has slightly different rules. Victoria is pretty much the only one now that has this preference whisperers side of setup, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think we had a similar process federally, but I think would have been about 8 or so years ago. It was changed, I think, from memory to the system that we have now, which is probably more preferable.
Yeah, where the people control the preferences, not the parties.
Correct.
Yeah, and people still were hammering us because remember how we were always getting hammered about
who do your preferences
go? Where do your preferences go? Mate, we don't control them, but you do. No, we're not controlling them. It's am I holding the pen for you when I write where 2 goes and 3 goes? I mean, you say it till you're blue in the face. It's like you're controlling it, and they go, oh. And then finally, after you're sick of saying it, as Stephen always says, once you're sick of saying it, they might start listening.
They might start listening, yeah.
Eventually. After the election.
Yeah. Well, when they were nuts.
Yeah.
That's all good.
So energy is a big issue for us up here in New South Wales. How's it playing out down in Victoria?
Yeah, well, the esteemed Premier has decided to announce to try and buy some votes. He's going to bring back the SEC, so, more the government-owned power company. And what he hasn't told, what he's not really telling people too much about the detail of it, is that it's going to be solely largely reliant on green energy.
Oh, of course.
Which is a bit of an oxymoron in itself. But, during one of my videos last week, I referred to the current climate change policy and its current iteration as a glorified Ponzi scheme. So some of the Greens didn't like that too much.
Yeah. People don't like... Sorry, go, Stephen.
There you go, Adam.
People don't like it when you say that, the green energy is not there yet. People don't like it when you say, well, we're using Australia itself. I mean, I know we're all around the state, but energy's energy. And it's like 30, so we're using 30% renewables now. And the promise has always been, once we go renewable, it'll go cheaper. So we're using the most ever renewables we've ever used before. I don't even like calling them renewables. I've got to be honest with you.
No.
Okay? I call it green energy because a solar panel ain't renewable. Okay? You make it, you use it for 10 years, and then you bin it. Then you have to make another one to replace it.
And then the lithium battery seeps into the ground and causes more damage to the environment.
Than anything else, right? And not to mention, too, a coal-fired power station or a nuclear power station has a lifespan of, I think nuclear last time was 180 years. I think they can run.
Yeah.
And coal-fired power station is 80 years in current form. But that's it'll run for 80 years without major maintenance or something like that. So a wind turbine has a lifespan of 20 years, but the blades need to be replaced every 10 years. Not to mention if they spontaneously combust and catch fire, you have to replace it anyway.
Yeah, well, with the wind turbines, they're not even recyclable or anything. So I think the last thing I heard is they wanted to make them into gummy bears, which is saying something about the state of our confectionery industry.
Yeah, awesome. I was going to say the same thing. Wait a second. You said they weren't recyclable, but they are because they can turn them into lollies. So they'll be spinning around for 100. They'll be spinning around for 10 years until they go blunt. Then they take them down and then they add some chemicals to it, turn it into like a gelatin, and then they can make gummy bears out of it. I'm really enjoying my wind turbine.
Is this real? I haven't heard this before.
This is dead set real. There was a news report. This was a report. And
this is the mainstream media. It must be true.
Stephen, you have to find it, and then you'll have to post it on here, right? But I'm telling you, right, it was kind of like, fiberglass gummy bears, delicious. I mean, that's going to save the environment, isn't it? But,
exactly.
Sorry. So, I'm on a rant. I'm in a bit of a rant mood, so I do apologise for you again. I'll let you do most of the talking.
No, that's right. So the other thing I was going to also talk about is our emergency services as well. Obviously, coming from the industry, is I can tell you now that the No, yeah, there's the clip there.
Look, it's there.
Crazy.
It's in print. Sorry, Ben. Don't worry. We've got heaps of time, mate. So you can get onto your emergency services.
No, that's right. That's right. It's all about the gummy bears right now.
But this is. What does it make? What does it make? What do you think the higher ups or confectionery industry think of us to give us that kind of product? You know, like what we to me, it just it's a slap in the face.
Bad.
It just feels like we're nothing. It just feels like who cares? They can eat wind propellers.
That's it. You know, with a side of bugs.
Yeah, with a side of bugs. Don't worry, because those things mow down so much bugs a year that there'll be bugs embedded in it. Don't worry.
Well, there you go. You don't even need to hose them off before you recycle them.
That's right. And it's like, you know. But yeah, that was that shocked me. But anyway, Ben, sorry. Back to the services. No, because I like right. Energy's my thing. Like I really get like excited about like energy, and I think that, you know, there's great purpose for battery operated, and there's great, but when the technology's there, unless we get out,
it's got its place.
Yeah, right. And personally, I think its place, and I was talking this to Stephen before, was I reckon that public buses. I hate staying behind a bus and the smoke's pouring out of it and it stinks. Yeah. But then when I'm following a green bus, we have some in our area, I'm kind of like, you know what? I reckon that's probably the future of battery-operated vehicles. Just use it for public service vehicles. Like, they can go to the depot. You don't have a million of them to charge and deplete the energy system, all getting charged between, you know, 7 and 9 p.m. at night. You have just a what do you call it? Just it goes to the depot. It gets charged. Another one comes out. You know what I mean? They can maintain it. It's kind of like good. They're powerful. They're pretty powerful. They don't get creeping up the hill. So I just think that that's kind of like a good thing for maybe battery operated vehicles, and then just stick to petrol and diesel for cars at this stage.
Also, please not for our emergency services vehicles, because you don't want your house on fire and being told that, you know, I'm sorry, but we've got to wait another 3 hours for the truck to charge up.
Yeah, no, definitely stick with gasoline and diesel for those, I reckon. Anyway, Ben, back to the emergency services. Okay. I'm sorry.
All right, no, that's right. So obviously I've worked in emergency services for 11 years, and I've obviously got a lot of respect for people, for, you know, police officers. I know that people might find that a bit funny for me to be saying that, but look, at the end of the day, and I referenced it in my video a couple of days ago, that I consider the police to be like the Jedi in Star Wars, in the sense that they're protectors of the peace, but they're not there to fight a war. So in effect, to circumvent Section 114 of the Commonwealth Constitution, you've got governments, and this is all governments that have been using the police as their own private military or their own private army, and that's just not constitutional whatsoever. So that's in regards to the police. With Ambulance Victoria, yes, there's a lot of bad press around their wait times and the fact that we can't get ambulances out to them. I mean, it probably would have helped if they didn't sack 93 of their paramedics in December last year, of which I'm speaking with most of them already, and I have been for almost a year now. So when I do my video on Victoria's ambulance service, I've effectively told the guys that were paramedics that they're going to be writing my script for me, because they know what they're talking about. I don't so much, and you know, they're gagged by APRA, so if they say anything, they're going to get their registration taken off them. I'm not even registered with APRA, so I'll just present whatever they want me to present.
Yeah.
With your background, there was a big thing a few months ago about ambulance ramping.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that is and why that was such a big issue?
Yeah, so essentially you've got ambulances that are either stuck at the hospital with things like, you know, whether they got what we call sections, which are psych assessments, mental health patients, that kind of thing. It's just a case of, you know, or they might be on, you know, meal breaks, or they might be on, they might just not have any staff in the area due to, you know, being not around. But essentially with the ramping, it's the fact that you don't have enough ambulances. So with their higher priority events, essentially, unless you were having a heart attack there and then, obviously there's been a reason why that's been a bit more increased in more recent times. But essentially you're being told that if you can jump in a taxi and go to hospital or get there yourself, then that's what you should be doing.
I thought I thanks for clearing that out, because I thought ramping was when they were actually treating people in the back at the hospital in the back of the ambulance because there was no beds for them.
Yeah, well, that's part of it as well, because again, they're shutting down wings to the hospital because they don't have staff. You know, it's great to say that the Liberals here in Victoria have said that we're going to build all these new hospitals, and Daniel Andrews has decided that after years of neglecting the health system that we're going to build all these hospitals as well. But who are you going to staff them with?
No, because all they want to do is what they want to do is open up the immigration and bring all the nurses in. But they don't realise that the nurses from America, you get very little nurses from countries that can just come work straight from their registration and come here and work. The Australian standards for nursing and like anything to be registered with APRA is so high that you couldn't get a nurse from Bangladesh. She could have been a nurse for 20 years in Bangladesh. If she comes across here, she's still got a year's worth of course to do. And then and I've seen it happen here, and I've spoken to nurses, and what happens is they bring the nurse will come over, male or female, then they want to bring the family too. So then what happens is they put them up into a house that we already have a housing crisis as well. They bring the nurse over, then they bring the husband or wife, or if there's a couple of kids as well, so they bring them over. Then they have to put them into a school. They have to subsidise their income. They have to subsidise for their rent as well. So we're paying for all this. So if you're going to build 2 or 3 hospitals and you need, 500 or 600 staff for a hospital, would you need more than that?
Thereabouts. No, thereabouts.
All right, so that's fine. We're going to bring 190,000 people in. We're going to open that up every year. We're going to open that up for special privilege for nurses and doctors and medical staff. Okay, but then what happens is, you bring, for every one, you might have to bring 4 to 5 people over, right, just to get your one.
Correct. And this is something because I actually did a rodeo program during my federal campaign, which was talking about the housing crisis in the Mount Alexander Shire, which is down around Castlemaine, so the south of Bendigo. And when I started talking about immigration being a potential solution to the situation and putting a halt on immigration, I started getting the eyebrows raised. But when I explained that it's basic maths, we've got an already existing housing crisis. You're bringing unlimited number of immigrants to Australia, many of whom probably won't be skilled because they will be family members. What's that going to do to our existing housing issue? It's going to make it worse. Tapping the brakes on immigration is probably going to be one of our best solutions at the moment, and only bring in people who are actually skilled, and they're not going to bring mum, dad, everyone else in their family trio as well.
Well, that's right. And just to touch back on with the medical industry, is that you'd have a nurse and that she'd have to do a course for over a year to become qualified to treat in Australia. So she could only work as an AIN or an maybe an endorsed registered nurse.
Correct.
Until she could become a full-fledged registered nurse.
A registered nurse,
Yeah. So, people don't realise, but that's okay. We'll bring people in and they can just do it. But as you're saying, it's 4 to 1 or 3 to 1. So for one skilled worker, you've got 3 that aren't probably skilled. And then what happens is, and then you've got to wait a year before we're really going to get the benefit of that. Anyway, we should be really, like you were saying, is bring immigration down, okay? Keep it focused for real skills-based people that can work straight away. And we should maybe bolster our universities and TAFEs and stuff like that, and get our students doing it, get the Australians into the jobs.
I've got another solution to it. There's plenty of trained nursing staff that can't work because they're not jabbed. Because so what's actually happened here, even though Mr. Andrews has decided to declare an end to the pandemic, which happened a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that he was 6 weeks away from a state election. What he's done is that he's slid the jab requirements to be that you have to be triple jabbed to work in healthcare, specialist schools, certain emergency services, and a few other areas as well. But he slipped them into the occupational health and safety regulations. So it's a way of making it look like a law but whilst bypassing the Parliament as well. So essentially the pandemic and even the little vaccinated economy still isn't over because people still can't work in their chosen profession as a result.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no. And have you got a number of have you got a rough estimate on how many nursing staff and medical staff actually left? We're basically.
I know it's significant, but I'm not sure of an exact number. I'm not even going to do a disservice by giving you a ballpark figure, but I can tell you it was quite significant, and you know that because you can't get appointments for anything these days. But I can tell you that 93 Ambulance Victoria staff sacked on December 6 last year is a confirmed number. That was through a Freedom of Information request.
93.
Yeah, and one of those sacked paramedics is actually a One Nation candidate in this state election too.
Oh, really? And what was that person's name?
Yeah, so I'll say hi to Jess. She'll know who she is. I'm sure I want to give out her surname, although
that's fine.
A smart person will probably work it out pretty quickly.
That's all right. It's all right, but no, that's unbelievable. 93,
and I've got a screenshot of it, and I'll chuck it into the comments of this video for those watching home. When Daniel Andrews a few months ago was praising that they've got 64 brand new paramedics that are about to hit the road. I'm thinking, okay, well, let's think about this for a second.
30 down.
You're still 30 odd down for starters, but they're newbies.
Yeah.
Exactly. You've lost decades and decades of experience. And it's just more of a natural progression that the older generation take the newer generation underneath their wings. But you're going to get a situation where you've got people with only 1 or 2 years' experience taking the newbies under their wings, potentially in life-threatening situations. The logic, it's as pointless as a blunt pencil.
Well, it's just political. It's just to save his
own. Yeah, no, see, whenever they said trust the science, again, I said this in my video, when they said trust the science, the word political is silence in the front of that. It's trust the political science. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot's coming out that there wasn't even any science. So
that's it. Well, Pfizer's admitted that they didn't even test if their trial vaccination actually had the capability to stop transmission. So, okay, well, that was one of the big selling points. We got Fauci and Biden and multiple people in Australia saying that's exactly what it would have done. And now they're trying to back away from it. I'm sorry, but you're on record as telling us that's what it was, and that's why a lot of people were suckered into taking this medical procedure.
Well, in New South Wales, we had Bradley Hazzard, Honourable Bradley Hazzard. He was.
Yes, I've heard all about him.
Yeah, right. And he earned the nickname of Health Hazard.
Yeah.
And we had Dr. Kerry Chan. Okay, and then
is that the one that whose glasses kept breaking on him?
I don't know, because after the first couple of weeks,
we couldn't stand watching it. Really,
we couldn't.
Yeah,
right. But what we're saying is, I don't know who your guys were down there. Feel free to name them, because Brett
Sutton's our chief health officer, and he's hopeless.
Yeah, and
essentially, I think he didn't even have the right qualifications to get his professor doctorate. He was given an honorary doctorate from one of the local universities. So I think most he's ever done, to the best of my knowledge, is work in an emergency room somewhere.
Yeah, and with all this health advice they kept referring to, where is it? How come we've never seen it?
Well, it's year 7 maths. Show us your workings. How did you come to this conclusion? That's all it is.
And then if you can show them you're working out, even if the answer's wrong, you still get half a point.
Well, that's exactly it. But having said that, with all that's how you get the people on side. Okay, we'll just say there's 100 people that didn't want the jab for whatever reason, and they said that because you're not showing us the science. Okay, if you showed them the science and everything was exactly as you said it would, you're probably going to get 95 of those people over to your way of thinking, and they'll probably start promoting it. I mean, obviously, you'll always have that small group of people, no matter what's said, that you won't change their mind because they're happy to be blissfully ignorant or whatever it is. But that's how you get the people on side, is show them how you came to these decisions. It's this thing that I mentioned earlier called transparency.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. Just be transparent. Well, and then you will get people on side.
But that's it. But you can see that there was no transparency, and there was no evidence. The reason why there's no evidence, Stephen, is what you're saying. Where is all these reports and where is all? Because they're not there. Yeah. Because there is none. And then
Yeah,
everything.
so if that's the case, the only way forward, and obviously Albo's not going to get off his arse and do it, so we might as well do it in Victoria, especially with an election coming up, is the only way forward for Victoria to heal and get closure as a society is a royal commission.
Yep.
Because that way we can see what the deliberations of the national cabinet were. Surely someone's taking minutes, and if Daniel Andrews decides to walk into that and say, I don't recall, okay, that's great, we're happy for you not to recall, we're going to fine you $10,000 a day until you can remember, or you can bring your notebook in. I mean, take your pick. And we can actually look at all this health advice and where they're getting their all this data from, because the data that Jared Rennick's running off, which I've actually got all the data sitting at my house because I know the lady who actually ran it, it's absolutely damning. I mean, as of January this year, there was 740 deaths reported to the TGA as a result after receiving one of these trial vaccinations, yet the TGA were only willing to accept that 11 of them were as a direct result of the jab. So there's 729 people that they're saying had other issues, which obviously is not the train of thought they went on when they were saying people are dying with COVID, because they just needed those numbers up. So with all that, so what we had is the TGA is now saying that 11 people died as the direct result of this jab. They've confirmed that from January up until January this year. So what that means is that if this trial vaccination is, as I said, still in its trial phase, that should be enough to pull it all together from the shelves.
Well, that's because there was something about some vaccine ages ago. 20 people died from it, and they pulled it across the world. Yeah. That was swine flu vaccination or something like that.
Was,
yeah, and then they pulled that. There was 20 people died from it, and then they just pulled it. So we've had 11 in Australia, which means you would have had 11 in every other pretty much country of the world. Would have probably you could safely assume.
Well, bear in mind we've only got a population of 26.5 billion. You go to somewhere like America where the population's 12, 15 times that.
Yeah.
Basic maths, it's pretty damning, and again, a lot of questions need to be answered, which is why I say a Royal Commission is the only way forward.
Yeah, I believe we're all kind of fighting for the Royal Commission and believe in the Royal Commission to see if we can, get some of the truth out there, and and I agree with you. I think to heal, it's not so much about punishment, but it's about making people feel accountable.
I think accountability. That's what
accountability. It's I don't care if people get hung or not. I'm not big on that. I don't care about that. But what I want to know is that people made a mistake. They misled the public.
Yeah.
And now we all know that they did that. And then what happens is, and then we won't let that happen again. And then it puts all the prejudice and all the biases to bed, because, between the vax and unvax and all that kind of stuff, right? People go, well, we were all lied to. We're all being taken for a ride. And now we know that they've done that. So now we can put it into our history books, not to be so trusting on people's word. We need to see.
Yeah, I can tell you now, what's happened over the last couple of years, this will be required learning in our high schools eventually, I think, and I think we're going to see it as specialist subjects in our universities as well. I honestly believe that Topher Field's Battleground Melbourne is going to be required viewing in high school eventually.
I've watched it. I've got a copy of that movie. Probably so. It's a raise awareness of what can go wrong.
Don't ever let this happen again. Because really the one question we should all be asking ourselves is, how did we let it come to this?
Well, it was apathy.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because people weren't interested in fighting unless it affected them directly. There are people on very high wages that are happy to say, well, look, if I just get this job, I get to keep my job. I don't care about anyone else. And that's extremely un-Australian as far as I'm concerned. I'm half Greek and the son of an immigrant. So, but even I've embraced the Australian culture, the Australian values, because that's what I was raised on.
People in New South Wales, like Adam and I, and elsewhere around Australia and worldwide as well, we can watch a documentary like Battleground Melbourne and see everything that happened. But you're actually living in Victoria during
Yeah.
these lockdowns. What's your experience of what happened during those
Yeah,
periods?
well, luckily, I mean, I split my time between Bendigo and Ballarat these days. Most of the lockdowns and the curfews and the Ring of Steel have mainly affected the guys in Melbourne. But
That's the thing we just forget about, like the Ring of Steel. Like that's like,
yeah,
you kind of just move on from things. But when like you watch documentaries like Battleground Melbourne, and these things are kind of, you're reminded of these things. You're just like, what happened?
yeah.
How did it get to this point?
And there's even a lot in there that Topher missed in that as well. But I mean, obviously, if he got everything, it would have been a 3-day movie. So, I mean, I took part in the protests. The big ones. That was, where you're seeing 750,000 people there, and it was just phenomenal to be a part of. And you're seeing, everyone getting in, giving each other hugs, high fives, just talking, telling their stories. And I wasn't there when, the rubber bullets and all that were flying as well. I was actually working at 000. I think I was working that day. I was definitely working the day of the Shrine of Remembrance. And I remember just shaking my head and saying, people have gone there for sanctuary, because that's what the diggers fought for. When the diggers came back from war, they gave us a democracy, they gave us a democratic country, and we've just seen, as you mentioned before, Stephen, with through apathy, we've just allowed that to be eroded to what we've got now, which is socialism. So essentially, it's going to take people of strength and integrity to reclaim this country, and whether you go down the current systems or whether you're going down common law or whatever else you want to go down. Essentially, there's many prongs to this attack, and we just need to make this place better.
Well, if you have apathy, then you don't have accountability.
Correct.
So, hopefully, the election will be a statement of accountability, because that's what our system of government is based on. You have the Westminster system of government, where accountability is built into the system, ideally, to keep people like Dan Andrews and all these chief health officers and things, like, if they're going to make these decisions, there has to be accountability as to why they made these decisions. What did they base them on? But
therein lies your problem. People will vote for their favourite party because that's how mum and dad voted. Yeah. That's how I've always voted. I've said it. I've lost count how many times I've said it. Get to know your candidate. Read their policies. That's how you decide who you're going to vote for, because there's our Victorian state policy. I think I've got a copy of the federal policy guide as well there as well. I call this the common sense guide, because if you read, say, Labor's policies or the Greens policies, no one's going to vote for them, because you got Labor, for example, they're purporting values that they're for the workers, which was from 40, 50 years ago, but that's definitely not what they are now, because if people actually voted what they're looking for, and that is socialism, then people simply won't vote for it. Everyone likes free stuff, but in Australia, again, I was always raised that you want something, you work for it.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you work for it, if you work hard, if you should be able to get it if you work hard for it.
Correct.
And the problem is at the moment is with inflation and the cost of living going up and energy, all that, right? The harder you work, it's getting absorbed in other taxes anyway now. Like basically, you're being taxed on, well, I know I go down to Victoria every now and then, and the toll on that road, whatever the main road is, I hate it, because oh man, beep every 5 minutes. It's just beep, beep, beep. Yeah. But New South Wales apparently is the most taxed state in the world on road tolls. So it's just it's pretty horrible what they're doing, and the cost of living is just going up with everything like that. And they're not fixing it. That's that was the budget was like that. It was not addressing anything at all.
Yeah.
So Ben, you've referenced some of your videos throughout this interview. Where can people find everything that you're posting?
Yeah, so they jump on my Facebook page, which is just write Ben Mihail One Nation, which is M for Mike, IHAIL. One Nation, I'm pretty easy to find. Not too many people have my last name. So, and I think there's only 2 Ben Mihails out there in Facebook lands, so I don't know if one's a fake account or not. But but you can go through a little bit through all my videos. So I'm kind of hitting all the big stuff, because I think that's really important, because I think in my first state video I referenced the Bible when I talked about 1 Corinthians 11:16, which says, but if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God. So what that actually means is to not worry so much about the small stuff and concentrate on the big stuff. So, all this woke, genderism, virtue signalling stuff, it's not important. It really isn't important whatsoever. What's important is that we bring this state and country back to prosperity. And how are we going to work towards doing that? Because, look, with socialism, you're effectively being taught to hate your country, and if you're taught to hate your country, you're not going to defend it when push comes to shove, and that's the problem. That's my number one fear for Australia.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to call this episode the Australian flag episode because.
Yeah, I did see it in previous things. Everyone, that the two of you guys have Australian flags. I noticed Warren and Rikkie-Lee's they didn't have one, so I thought I better grab mine out and go for it. Actually, speaking of the ever wonderful Rikkie-Lee, she's wanting to know when the name change is going to come from ex-candidates to One Nation, Next Generation.
We have been thinking about it. It's definitely it's not that easy. To rebrand everything. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes.
We were thinking about it. We've got a layout. I know Stephen's done the layout. Stephen's the guy who does all the stuff for that. But he's but we're kind of branded at the moment, aren't we? Kind of. Yeah. And it was just a play on words.
It's not really a fitting name. It's kind of like it's one of those advertising. When you watch an advertisement and the kid's wearing the red hat and then it cuts away to a scene and you cut back to the scene and he's suddenly wearing a blue hat. You're like, hang on.
The old continuity error.
Yeah, but it gets in your head and you start thinking about it and focus on it. So, anyway, we're going to roll with that line, I think, Adam.
Yeah, I think so too. We're branded. You know what I mean?
Adam was the one that came up with the name, so
that's right. Well, just for the record, Rikkie-Lee, I'm sorry, I tried. When you watch this, I really tried.
No, we appreciate the feedback because we're we thought about it a little bit of time ago as well. But we're kind of 22, 23 episodes almost in now.
Yeah.
And you're kind of what do you do? It's kind of like the footy show, when they, the two main characters go and then the next two come in, it kind of changes it. So it's kind of don't fix what ain't broke just yet.
That's it. And look, and I think that's a very good point. That's probably a bit of a reflection on society, isn't it? We've got too many people trying to fix everything with their virtue signalling, and you think, well, no, hang on, it wasn't an issue 5 years ago. I mean, take things like climate change now, for example. I love bashing on climate change because it's just, like shooting fish in a barrel. But, how long ago was it? It was global warming, but because the world's going through its cooling stage, we decided we're going to change it to climate change.
And it was never going to rain again.
And, and it's kind of a bit of a cover-all kind of thing.
Yeah. That's it. You can't please everyone. That's it. You can
keep some of the people happy some of the time, but you can't keep all the people happy all the time.
That's right.
That's it. Exactly. But I love the climate change topic because climate changes.
That's it. Someone came up to me the other day and they said to me, "Oh, here in January it's going to be 39 degrees," and I said, "Yes, it's called summer."
Yeah. It was 39-degree days last year and the year before and the year before that, and probably 200 years ago there was also 39-degree days. And, we haven't got records of it. 260 years ago, we won't have records of what the temperatures were in Australia,
That's right. Yeah. So I was wondering, for you guys, I'll just ask you guys a question. How do you guys go with hecklers up there during your federal campaigns? Do you get many of those? Obviously, I've seen one with yourself, Stephen, up on stage.
I always get surprised how many people have seen that thing.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting there thinking, look, love, you're drinking from the same cup as the village idiot if you're going down this path.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking on the stage. I was like,
don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, no, I was to be honest with you, I was expecting a lot more, but
Yeah.
it wasn't too bad actually. I think I was in a high-profile seat, so the two main candidates, Sally Stegel and Catherine Dees, got all the attention, and
Yeah.
it's actually without any big funding behind you or advertising or anything like that, it's hard to really get your name out there. So I think I just kind of flew under the radar and missed some of that, but.
Sounds like you were just happy to be there.
Well, in the end, if you can get through an election campaign without too much heckling, you'll take it. But
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed. I only had a handful of them. So, being in a strong Labor seat where, One Nation isn't overly, well, at the time it wasn't overly well known in Victoria. I only got a handful of them, so I thought I must have been doing something wrong.
well, I think that's the really exciting thing about what you guys are doing down there. Like, One Nation hasn't really had a strong presence in Victoria up until this point. But, having yourself on and then Rikkie-Lee and Warren in previous episodes, we've been tremendously impressed by you guys. And we've actually been getting feedback. It's always text messages behind the scenes. No one ever wants to kind of put it publicly, but they've been saying, Warren and Rikkie-Lee both, and I'm sure with this one as well, they were tremendously impressed by you guys. So it only takes one of you getting into Parliament and suddenly you can build on that, and hopefully, next time around 2 of you get in and then 3 of you get in, and you just build on from that.
Well, that's it. Because I'm going to the lower house, obviously, One Nation actually winning government here in Victoria, slight chance it won't happen is my guess. But you know what? Even if I'm going to be constantly voted down by the whoever forms government, that's fine. I'm going to be bloody entertaining to watch though in Parliament. The way I carry on like a pork chop. So,
As long as you don't carry on like Lydia Thorpe, we'll be all right.
Yeah.
No. I might be crazy, but I ain't cray.
No. But, I was going to say, but the quality of candidates, I think that's the difference as well now, especially with One Nation. Like, there are some really good quality candidates coming through, like yourself, like Rikkie, like Warren. Especially in Victoria at this stage. The candidates, and we have this. The cream rises to the top. That's another Stephen Tripp phrase. So you guys have, I know Rikkie had run a few times, I think, already.
Yeah. This is their third campaign, yeah.
Right, and then you ran federally, and then Warren ran federally, and this is he's running again statewide.
Yeah.
It's just really good to see. Like, you guys are entertaining, knowledgeable, right? Good, informative. So I think it's really important for the party itself to continue to build a strong candidate base, because eventually we will start getting into Parliament, and we need the best foot forward. So to build on that as well. So, keep up the good work with all that. And, you are a good candidate. And from talking to you today, we know candidates now. I mean, we've all been in the circuit enough to know who stands out and who doesn't. You know what I mean? So it's so good on you there, and good luck to Victoria.
Thank you. Well, I think with all that, I think it's more of a case also that I think that was the non-negotiable that One Nation had when selecting their candidates, is that they wanted genuine people. They didn't want people who were looking to be career politicians, people that saw a problem and think that they've got the right skill set to fix it. And, as long as you're a genuine person, I think One Nation were pretty happy to take people on board and take the punt on them. So, and I think it's worked with many of us. I will say one person I was very impressed with his federal campaign was, was it Sam, the young fella, Sam?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Sam Shriver?
Shriver, that's him. Yeah. He was fantastic. I absolutely loved his campaign. I think he did really well, and I think he's, extremely wise beyond his years. So I'm really looking forward to see what he does in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was only this week, Warren was part of a candidate forum. I think that was on Turning Point Australia. And you just saw, how he stood out more than you had David Limbrick on stage, who has been in Parliament, yet he was the biggest, as using your term, pork chop of them all. Warren was just kind of sitting there going, really?
Yeah, well, the Liberal Democrats do actually use the preference whisperer, which is where Limbrick's from.
Notorious for using them.
Yeah.
And they don't deny it either.
No. Well, I mean, I've spoken to three people within the Liberal Democrats, and they always seem to use the same terminology. They always say, well, we need to get a seat at the table. And I'm saying, well, at the sake of, at the expense of your integrity. Is that what we're doing? When you get into Parliament, are you going to try and stop this practice from happening? Even though it's not unlawful, it's definitely unethical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's meant to be government by representation, not government by, Glenn Jury.
Correct. Because of the Glenn Jury model, that's how we got this pandemic legislation. This is how a lot of people lost their jobs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
And,
thank you very much for coming on, Ben. Like we've really enjoyed this. So, just again, how can people follow you?
Yeah, so jump on my Facebook page, Ben Mihail. Just write Ben Mihail One Nation. I'm pretty easy to find, and you'll see a fair bit of content, plenty of videos, and we're really excited to get Malcolm Roberts down to Victoria on the 5th and 6th of November. So if you want tickets, reach out and we'll hook you up.
Yeah, can you tell us about that? Because we've even looked at flights. They're a little bit expensive, unfortunately, but we'd love to come to that as well.
So we've got in Melbourne, we've got a dinner, black tie dinner, which will be great on the night of the 5th, I think it is. Yeah, the 5th of November, and then we're going to have a breakfast about an hour north of Melbourne CBD, which will be really good, limited to about 80 people, that one. So it's going to be a really good event for people to get in and ask Malcolm some questions and pick his brain, because he's actually quite knowledgeable as well.
Yeah.
And I've obviously already been tapped on the shoulder by the guys from here in Victoria to MC at both events, which is great.
Oh, good luck. It's not an easy job.
Well, you get some pointers off Stephen, because Stephen did a great job for our little fundraiser that we did.
Oh, sounds good. Yeah.
Stephen, he'll get his number and let him give you a call or something like that. It's always at late at night though, because he's a night shift worker. So
okay, well I'll call him at 3 a.m. then.
Yeah, that's why he'll be awake. Don't worry.
My only advice would be close your eyes and hope for the best.
Yeah, no, that's right. I used to do professional event hosting once upon a time, so I'm used to speak in front of crowds, which is pretty
I
good.
should have got your advice. I should have been calling you at 3.
I didn't know that about you, mate.
This is why I do videos, because I'm used to presenting things to people. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Awesome. And just for yourself, have you got any big campaign events coming up in East Bendigo?
Just the ones with Malcolm. It's really, I prefer just go out there and meet the people, to be perfectly honest. That's really what I do, is that I prefer not to reply to a text message or or talk on the phone if need be. Generally, throughout my entire federal campaign, someone called me and said, "Oh, can we have a talk about this?" And my first response was always, "Where are you? I'll come to you."
Wow.
And I'd sit down with them for 20, 30 minutes and just have a chat about whatever they wanted to. And this is the whole mantra that I was talking about One Nation wanting genuine people. I want people to see that, yes, I am a genuine person and I do actually have your best interests at heart. I'm not here just to be a career politician, take the money and run kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Well, I'm sure you're going to make a big difference. I'm sure you're going to go well. You know what I mean? It's going to be a hard task. It's a hard task to topple the Labor machine.
Yeah.
When they get in, because I'm in the same kind of situation in Campbelltown. It's all Labor.
Yeah.
They're just a well-oiled machine, and they just know what they're doing, and they've got their stories, and they've got their plan, and they just follow that. It's just like Macca's every year. They just follow it the same, and it just keeps going on.
That's it. I compare them to Starbucks.
Oh, Starbucks. Yeah, but you're down in Victoria. No, awesome.
Okay, well, if you really enjoyed this episode, please share it, get the word out there. And again, we want to thank Ben for coming on, and we look forward to having some more Victorian candidates in the next few episodes. So thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Don't forget, #Ben into Bendigo East.